Hello. Hello. How are you doing? Woo! Second week of the year. Crazy. Okay. Or maybe, is it still the first? Anyway, forget that I said that. So, all the songs are the same, and you know them. And I have a little bit of a testimony. Ooh, scary word. Old church word that I'm going to share for the third song. But other than that, they're all the same. So, if you would, please stand and sing with us. or hum or tap your feet. If it is some care you need, come and cast your cares on me. And if you need a listening ear, I wanna hear the whole story, dear. Tell me everything, don't leave nothing out. So fight the voice that says you're on your own. You don't have to do this thing alone. No. Tell me everything. Don't leave nothing out. I'll be waiting on you. Come as you are. You don't have to be lonely. You can tired and confused. Lay it all down, bring it on up to someone who loves you. You don't have to be lonely, no, no, no. Oh, you don't have to be lonely. Come as you are. You don't have to be lonely. You can count on me. Come as you are. You don't have to be lonely. You can count on me. Come as you are. Oh, come as you are. Feeling good, like I should. Willing to go walk around the neighborhood. Feeling blessed, never stressed. Got that sunshine on my Sunday best. Every day can be a better day despite the challenge. All you gotta do is leave it better than you found it. It's gonna get difficult to stand, but hold your balance. I just say whatever, cause there is no way around it. Everyone falls down sometimes. You just gotta know it'll all be fine. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Feeling good, like I should. you're surrounded. Gotta give your feet some gravity to keep you grounded. Keep good things inside your ears just like the waves and sound it. And you say whatever, cause there is no way around it. Everyone falls down sometimes. You just gotta know it'll all be fine. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Feeling good like I should. And it took a walk around the neighborhood. Feeling blessed, never stressed. Got the sunshine on my Sunday bed. Feeling good like I should. When it took a walk around the neighborhood, I'm feeling blessed, never stressed. Got that sunshine on my Sunday bed. Feeling good like I should. When it took a walk around the neighborhood, I'm feeling blessed, never stressed. Got that sunshine on my Sunday bed. Feeling good like I should. When it took a walk around the neighborhood, feeling blessed, never stressed. Got that sunshine on my Sunday bed. Feeling good like I should. When it took a walk around the neighborhood, feeling blessed, never stressed. Oh, got that sunshine on my Sunday bed. Got that sunshine on my Sunday bed. Got that sunshine on my Sunday bed. So, testimony time. Woo! Okay, so cautionary tale, but also cool things happen when bad things happen first. So I got a DM on Instagram a few days ago, and this person was like, "Oh, me and my wife want you to write a song for our 8-year-old son on his birthday, blah blah blah." And they were gonna pay me an amount, and they were like, "Oh, we're gonna email you this electronic check." Long story short, I got scammed for a large amount of money in the triple digits. And I was like, I am a musician. Not that I'm going to speak over musicians that we're going to always not make a lot of money, but dag nabbit, it is hard to survive on music alone if you're not famous. And I was like, I didn't even have that money to lose. What am I going to do? So literally, was on the phone with Apple, was like trying to get the money back. I couldn't get it back. It's gone. So I was depressed about it, but then I was like, it's fine. Not really. And then the next day, I got a gig for pretty close to that amount, like short, like maybe $150 of that amount. And then by the time the night ended, between what I made on the gig and the tips, I made over what I had lost the next night after being scammed. So the issue with stories like this is it's like, oh, like that means that every time something horrible happens, that means that exactly what happened to her is going to happen to me. I'm not saying that. I'm saying there's a lot of horrible things that happen in the world that you're like, why didn't God show up there? And I don't have any answers for that. But I will say that God is really good at restoring what you lose. I don't know how God's going to restore it, but it will be restored. And that's just what I want to share with you. So, woo! And it's great to tie into the song because the song is called You've Got It. And you have to like let go of your like control and then just see what happens once you stop trying to control everything. together by now, by now. But I don't, and I can't figure it all out. I've tried and tried. Now I'm taking it day by day. Don't need to play by play. Why worry when I can just trust? Day by day, don't need to play by play. Why worry when I can just trust you? I don't need to worry about a thing. I put it in your hands. Let go of my plans. You've got it. Every little thing will be alright. You've got the best for me. I trust you with everything. You've got it. You got it. I find it hard to tell you I need you, but I'm done with that. No more heavy burdens, I lift my hands up now. God help me now. I don't need to worry about a thing. I put it in your hands. Let go of my plans. You got it. Every little thing will be alright. You've got the best for me. Trust you with everything. You got it. You got it. You got Now I'm taking it day by day. Don't need to play my play. Why worry when I can just rest? Now I'm taking it day by day. Don't need to play my play. Why worry when I can just trust you? I don't need to worry about a thing. I put it in your hands. Let go of my plans. You've got it. Every little thing will be alright. You've got the best for me. I trust you with everything. Oh, I don't need to worry about a thing. I put it in your hands. Let go of my plans. You've got it. I think little thing will be alright. Trust you with everything. You've got it. You've got it. You've got it. You got it. You got It's extravagant. It doesn't make sense. We'll never comprehend the way you love us. It's unthinkable. Only heaven knows just how far you go to say you love us, to say you love us, to say you love us. Oh, it's extravagant. It doesn't make sense. We'll never comprehend the way you love us. It's unthinkable. Only heaven knows just how far you'd go to say you love us, to say you love us, to say say you love us. Sing it one more time. It's extravagant. It doesn't make sense. We'll never comprehend the way you love us. It's unthinkable. Only heaven knows just how far you'd go to say you love us.
Oh. Did I just ruin like a great moment?
You did it.
Man, clap it up for the band. Big thanks to Gianna for sharing that story, and I'm sorry, that sucks, but also it's amazing. And just so you know, we plan like the set list like days, weeks, a month-ish in advance, and we didn't plan to do that extravagant tag at the end of the You've Got It. Gianna just kind of came in with that this morning and like made it up. So that just shows you how great our band is. They're just doing mashups like on the fly. Yeah. So maybe if we do it again, we might even like throw the lyrics up so you can sing along too. Anyway, how are you guys? Pretty decent start to the year so far? Yeah, me too. If you've been here the past couple weeks, you may know that I just turned 40 like a week and a half ago. Yeah, thank you. Don't look a day over 39, right? Oh. It's hard to have a birthday party when your birthday's on the 27th, so we waited until yesterday. So I'm going to be that weird guy on stage who's like, shout out to my awesome wife for throwing me a cool party yesterday. It was really fun. Thanks. Yeah. I don't even know why I'm telling you guys this. Because the start of my year has been pretty good. I had a party. It was a frat party. Okay, let's talk about church stuff. First of all, if you're new, if you've been here forever, if you've been here a couple weeks, welcome. Take your phone out, go to diff.church. That's the best way to kind of connect with us. You can sign up for the mailing list. You can donate if what we're doing is something you believe in. One of the things we believe in is we like to hang out with each other. And so today after church, Sunday Fun Day is at Love Food Central. It's right back that way. So after church is over, we're going to take a couple minutes. We're going to break down here, and then we're going to head that way to hang out. Feel free to come on over. It's a good time. You're going to love it. It's vegan food. So if that's the sort of thing that you really like, that's a selling point. If it's something you don't like, you can't tell it's vegan food. Cool. Okay. The biggest announcement I have for you today. Okay. This is one of those rallying calls. I love it whenever our people are on stage and you guys show up to support them. So the 30th, the last Sunday of this month, we're doing what we call a biography. It's where we let our people on stage and they tell stories about a particular theme or subject. This one is going to be about joy. So we're going to have, I think, 5 different people telling stories about joy. So please mark it on your calendar to be here, but not here. We're going to be somewhere else. Was anybody with us Easter of last year? Raise your hand if you were attending church then. So they kicked us out of the building for a couple weeks so they could fix the floor. And if you've ever walked anywhere on the floor, you were aware that they did not fix the floor. So we're getting kicked out again that Sunday and potentially the first Sunday next month. Where are we going to be? We're going to be at the Mar, which is like right over there. It could not be more convenient. It's literally on Central and at the corner. We'll make sure you have the address. We'll make sure you have all you need to know. Just follow us on all the socials. Make sure you're on our email list. So the 30th biography at the Mar, okay? And then probably the week after we will be there as well. Cool? Cool. Hannah, come on up. Oh,
I muted you because the soundboard's way over there. It's like a whole thing. I can't be trusted to carry the iPad up the stairs and my body. Just so you know, I've never dropped my baby, but I have dropped everything else. Hi. I'm very excited about today because I have the pleasure of talking to you about a subject that I'm terrible at. And I'm quite sure by speaking about this, I will be given many opportunities to practice, which I'm not excited about. And I am talking about conflict. So, raise your hand if you feel like you are just really good at navigating conflict. 4 people. Okay, I'm not. Maybe. Mike said he's good at creating conflict, and his husband was like, yes. So, I am what I would like to call conflict averse. So, especially when any kind of aggression is involved. So, like, if you want to see me back away from you, or try to escape the situation, or just literally shut down, just yell at me. That's all you gotta do. Even if you speak sternly in my direction. Like, I can't handle it. Like, I'm pretty much guaranteed to, like, panic and possibly cry. For sure. Like, I cannot deal. Is anyone the same way? Like, conflict makes you like, okay, thank you for being honest. Perhaps you're the other way, where conflict just lights up that part of your brain, makes you feel alive. And you're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go in on this right now. I am gonna attack this person. I have been waiting. I have a bullet from days ago, from months ago. I'm gonna be like, I know what. There's a reason I don't fight with certain people, because they will win. They're gonna be like, hey, and I'm gonna be like, hey, and they're gonna be like, you're dead. I can't top that. That was real harsh, y'all. So, the chances are, no matter how you process conflict, however it shows up in your life, it's the opposite of how your partner does, or your family, or your BFF. The person you are navigating conflict with is guaranteed to not navigate it the same way you do, which in turn gives you more conflict. Delightful. Conflict is really hard for us, and I'm not speaking just as a person who can't handle it. I think by and large, none of us have been taught the emotional regulation skills that we need in order to process a conflict successfully. And how we act when a conflict arises is usually a window directly into our childhood dysfunction. Like, you did not know you were about to get a front row seat into how someone grew up, but you are. And guess what? They're getting a front row seat to how you grew up. Whether yelling was allowed, not allowed, how conflict was processed, not processed, ignored. And if we have been sold a bill of goods, I think, especially in faith culture, if you've grown up around the church, that says if you are in a successful relationship, you will not have any conflicts. Yeah, right. Somehow we have this idea that true love or true friendship just doesn't have any bumps in the road. We're like, if you really love that person, well then you just agree on stuff. Or you just love them so much that it doesn't matter. That also goes hand in hand with the lie that if you have Jesus in your heart, everything in your life will be great. Which, I've had Jesus in my life since I was born. Not all great. I can only speak from personal experience. We're like, yes, everything is going to be magical. All things will be good. That's not actually what the verse says. It does not say all things will be good. It says all things work together for good, and some things sucks. I added that parentheses. That's my translation of the Bible. Conflict is a given. It's just going to happen. You just have to accept it. Whenever you get people together, it's guaranteed. In fact, the closer you get to people, the more of a guarantee there is that you will fight with them. Or the more you give someone access to the interweb and social media, the more of a guarantee there will be that there will be conflict. It's not if conflict happens, it is when conflict happens. So we have to learn how to navigate it. Even though we're like, no, this seems hard. Well, because it is hard. We cannot just stick our heads in the sand and then be shocked when a conflict comes up. And we're like, I was just living my life, living my best life, okay? And then this person was I cannot believe, okay? Like, if I opened my phone this morning, I checked the weather app, which I did, and it told me it was going to be 81 today, and I was very upset. January. But if it was like, hey, newsflash, hurricane coming tomorrow. And then I was like, that would not be wise, right? I wrote this, and then I realized if you're from up north, that may seem like a legitimate example to you. But if you've been here, like I have for most of my life, like I don't take hurricanes seriously unless they're like Cat 3 or above. So maybe not a good example, but there's also something in the Bible about this, about the wise person who built their house on the bedrock, right? And then the dum-dum who built the high-rise on the beach. And then the wind came and it huffed and puffed and blew his high-rise down. And he was like, what, why? I can't imagine why my tower fell down. Because he didn't have it on the bedrock. That's my paraphrase of the Bible. We have to prepare ourselves. It's like we're saying we're not even preparing for the thing we know is coming. It could be coming later today. It could be coming a week from now. Wouldn't you like to have some tools for when it happens so you're not like, the second it arises? How do we do it? Stick around and I'll tell you right after these messages. No, I'm kidding. In Colossians 3, verses 12 through 14, it says, this is Paul writing, as God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience. Bear with one another. And if anyone has a complaint against another person, forgive each other. Just as the Lord has forgiven you, so you must also forgive. Above all, clothe yourselves in love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony. My work here is done, right? No explanation needed. You just take those verses and you're like, got it. No, I feel like we need some explanation because we're 2,000 years later. But also I feel like the people who got this letter would be like, okay. Thank you, Paul, for writing us this delightful letter. Also, I don't know how to do that. What do you mean clothe myself with compassion and humility? I like the clothing metaphor. But if we're supposed to put on clothing of humility and kindness and compassion and meekness and patience, what clothing are we taking off? Okay, so metaphorically, please keep your clothes on. If you read back in verse 8, which is before what I read, it says, we take off our old self, which is full of anger, wrath, malice, slander, and abusive language. Now, I think most of us have been taught that anger is bad. Anger is not bad. Anger is our body's way of telling us that something is wrong, or boundaries being violated, or it's the bodyguard for sadness, or grief, or loss that we don't want to deal with. The problem is not anger. The problem is what we do with it, or what it turns into. So does your anger turn into wrath? Uncontrolled rage? Are you like raging? Does your anger turn into malice, the desire to do harm to someone, like actual do something against them? Does it turn into slander? Do you start gossiping, saying horrible things about people? Does it turn into abusive language? Do we just like attack other people with our words? You cannot just squeeze a t-shirt of compassion from Baby Gap on top of your puffer coat of rage and call it a day. That is not how this works. Okay? We have to take off the layers of our old clothing, metaphorically, so that we can put on clothes that actually are better and more beautiful and more comfortable. We're talking about a change in our condition, but it's not just something weird and like mysterious that happens on the inside. It is a change in the values and the behaviors that we choose to drape over ourselves. Paul really likes the clothing metaphor because I think our clothes say a lot about us, right? How we want to be presented to the world, what our value system is. We have to be concerned with the way our souls are dressed because guess what? Everybody's going to see it eventually. You could be like the most sparkly, perfect person on the outside, and then, have any of you ever been in a situation where you're like, oh, that's who they are? Or perhaps you've been in that situation with yourself when you're like, that's who I am. That hurts worse, I think. It would be a mistake to read those scripture verses as like a first century call to civility. Like Paul just being like, okay, now y'all be nice. No, Paul is not saying fake it till you make it. Paul is not saying you can catch more flies with honey than vinegar. Although that is a very strange statement. First of all, do you want to catch flies? Also, what are you going to do with the flies when you catch them? Murder them? I would if they were in my house. I don't think we want to view each other as flies. Okay. That was a tangent. Putting on the clothing of compassion and humility and kindness is more than just a way to get through life that will make people like you more. This is heavy work. This is like spiritual and emotional, high-intensity interval training. Being with each other, forgiving each other, this is not work for the faint of heart. This is hard emotional labor. Forget about putting on a happy face and accentuating the positives. Conflict avoidance, my specialty, is not what we are being told to do. This is about how we act when emotional fights break out. And our common experience, I think, is that our most rage-inducing, frustrating occurrences that cause us to be I've never, it takes a lot to make me mad, although I have been a bit ragey since Nova was born. I should say since I got pregnant. And it's a new experience. I kind of like it. But we're the things that make us like that the most are the people we are closest with. Our partners, our family members, our friends, our spiritual community, our kids. Ugh. When we know people really well, or we have some kind of preconceived notion of who they are, how they should act, right? It's going to get hard. Rarely is our anger and our impulse to attack someone or wish revenge on someone as strong as when we get into a conflict with someone we love. What is conflict? It's difference plus tension. Difference plus tension. We can disagree with each other all day long and it not be a problem. I disagree with all kinds of people all the time. Is it a problem? Not usually. But inevitably, we go make it personal. We start attacking each other. We escalate our differences of opinion or culture or values to astronomical levels. And we think that we are the savior of the world and that we have to change people's opinions. And in philosophy, this is actually a philosophical fallacy called ad hominem. It means attacking the person. It means instead of discussing the actual subject or the argument, you go in on that person. So for example, if I'm like, hey, this restaurant down the street is really good, and you're like, no, that restaurant sucks. And I'm like, well, I had a great experience. And you're like, well, you have bad taste. That is attacking the person. Okay, here's another example. Someone says something about you, and you're like, I don't need to respond because I see no need to defend myself against a bunch of stupid people. You're attacking the people. Or someone presents an idea, and you're like, what a stupid idea because it was written by a bunch of fascists anyway. We just immediately were like, oh, we're just going to discount the person or the whole group of people. We don't want to talk about the argument because then we might have to actually produce some evidence or think. We're just like, no, we're just not even going to talk about that at all. Just attack you. And if we attack the person instead of the subject matter, we are guaranteed to just be adding more tension to the situation and be completely unable to have any kind of reasonable adult discussion. We are all adults in here. I don't see any children. That sucks sometimes because it means, guess what? We get to act like adults. We get to be the controllers of our own bodies and minds and emotions. And honestly, sometimes the tension comes from inside of us, not what's going on. Sometimes I don't think people truly, usually mean to upset or hurt us. For the most part, I think people have fairly good intentions, but we are love insecure people. And we are super touchy, especially if someone puts their finger on a nerve. During holidays, if your mother-in-law makes a comment about the cleanliness of your house. Mine didn't, in case you're watching. I love you. Here's a personal example. When Nova was little, 3 months old, my mom made this offhand comment about how we should have another kid someday. And I was like, I don't know if that's gonna happen. I said we probably weren't gonna have another one, which we totally might, who knows. But at the time, I was very convinced that was it. And she said, oh, I'll be really sad if you don't have another kid. And I was like, whoa, like instantly. And I was very tired. I hadn't slept in a long time. And I was a little ragey because of the hormones. And by a little, I mean a lot. I went off, not nicely, okay? And I should not have. I should not have. And it took me a few days to like unpack why it bothered me so much, and then another whole day to like work up the nerve to apologize. Because it was not because she said she would be sad if I didn't have another baby. She's allowed to have feelings, just like we all are. It's because inside of me, I felt out of control and overwhelmed. Like the comment, it will be sad if we had another kid. That just brought up like a million things for me that my mom did not mean. It made me feel like a bad mom because I couldn't put my own needs aside enough to give Nova a person to play with for her whole life and someone to love, and she's just gonna be stuck with me, and my husband is just gonna be terrible, okay? Like I'm depriving her of something. It made me mad because, not because a boundary was being crossed, but because I felt like no one believed me about how hard it was. And I already gotten a few comments from delightful, well-meaning people about how I would change my mind eventually. Whether or not I would change my mind was not the point, okay? The point was I was drowning. The point was I woke up every morning and literally my first thought was I cannot do this. Like I cried every day, sometimes multiple times a day. The idea of having another child was so overwhelming because I wasn't surviving the one I had. And everyone told me, well-meaning people, remember, ask for help. Everyone, just remember to ask for help. I'm like, no one's coming over to hold the baby, so who am I supposed to be asking? And of course I yelled at the one person who was helping me, my mom came over every weekend for the first 5 months of her life. Like I literally wouldn't have survived without her. And she was the person I yelled at. Everyone told me, just don't worry about the house cooking and the cleaning because that will all keep, but babies grow so fast. Okay, that's great, thank you. Except that I was living on a diet of like protein bars and graham crackers. And also the laundry did have to be done every single day because Nova produced oceans of spit up. Like we went through multiple outfit changes a day. Everyone was like, don't you worry, it gets easier. Thank you. Like, I was working 40 hours a week at a law firm while carrying around a 3-month-old baby with no childcare. She went to work with me every day, which she hated. She once screamed so loudly there that you heard her through 2 walls. And I wasn't sleeping, and I was trying to get everything done, right? And I was still trying to think of something coherent to say on like a Sunday morning here. And at the time, it didn't feel like easier would ever happen or was even possible. And all of that was all in me when my mom was like, it would be sad if you didn't have another kid. And I was like, right? I had to come back down to earth. I had to regulate myself, which like I said, took a day or two. And then I had to apologize and repair the situation and explain why I was so upset. And when I did, my mom was horrified. She was like, oh my God, I would never want to make you feel like, because of course she didn't want to make me feel like that. Then my mama, right? It was me. She didn't mean any of that. It was what was inside of me that came out. And sometimes the tension is inside of us. And I know, especially if you are recovering from a trauma or abuse or some kind of situation in church or with a family member where your needs were not taken seriously, we tend to go hard on other people. And I'm not saying that's not wrong. It's fine. But also, we have a responsibility to deal with our stuff. Okay? Just because someone says something does not mean you get to be offended. We have a responsibility to do the work of healing so that we don't start blaming everyone else for making comments when they maybe didn't mean it like that at all. Just working up the resolve to say, I'm sorry, no matter what you are disagreeing about or how right you feel you still are. Just working up the resolve to say, I'm sorry. That will often take more energy than the entire fight you had before. Because, when you were fighting before, you had adrenaline. You had like, though you were right. It was like now or never. You were just going to give you my opinion, okay? And then later, your brain is like, well, maybe you should check yourself because you done wrecked yourself already. And then you're like, oh no, I don't have any adrenaline. I feel like a bad person. We live in a culture that like faintly praises kindness and humility and meekness, right? But these qualities are not usually present in history makers. They're held up as ideals for personal etiquette. Just be nice to each other. But they're ignored, mostly, by real-life decision makers, right? What do we prize in people that have power and control? Being tough and strong and a real go-getter and a person who doesn't take no for an answer. Reconciliation, repairing, is not the suppression of conflict any more than peace is the absence of violence. Ditching the conversation and like cutting the lights, pretending it doesn't exist, this is apostasy. Apostasy is a church word, a theological word. It means denying or abandoning your religion or core belief. If we are not willing to exist in a conflict and work through conflict, we are actually denying the holy, beautiful process of transformation that God is trying to do in our lives. We have to transform our conflict thinking. We have to remember, first of all, that conflict is a given. It's not if, it's when. The thing that makes conflict so explosive is fear. I mean, the Bible has a lot to say about fear. You can Google. There's 1 million pages of verses about fear. But here's a question to ask yourself next time you feel that, there's a difference, and then you feel that tension creeping up. What are you afraid of? What are you so afraid of? What are you really afraid of? And you do not need to be a saint or a rocket scientist or Jesus himself to develop the skills to handle conflict. Every person can learn to move through the dynamics of conflict and practice habits of grace-filled response. The traditional responses are fight and flight and freeze. But clearly there's a third option, and it's the one Paul is advocating here. It's the one Jesus portrayed. And it's that conflict is actually an opportunity to deepen relationships. Think of the people you love most in the world. Chances are it has not always been smooth sailing for you. Practicing moving through conflict in nonviolent ways in our own families and in our own faith communities, that is the best training ground we have for the work of reconciliation in the world. It's not just a nuisance to be managed or a situation to be handled so that we can get back to happy. How we deal with conflict is part of our spiritual formation. How we deal with forgiveness is part of our spiritual formation. And it's not simple or easy. It doesn't mean forgive and forget. It doesn't mean we let abusers get away with the harm that they're doing. It doesn't mean we absolve people from experiencing the natural consequences of their behavior. Our ability to forgive people is based on our lived experience of being forgiven and affirmed and accepted and celebrated by God. That's where it comes from. And it's going to feel tricky. We don't have the muscle memory. Anything new feels tricky for a while. You don't have the neural pathways in your brain for this to feel like second nature. But we can practice. Practice leads to habits. Our muscle memory slowly forms, inch by inch and step by step. And our words and our actions slowly become more like Jesus, which is what we're trying to do, right? Otherwise, what's the point? Are we just getting together here to be friends? I do like y'all. Is that it? We're trying to be more like Jesus. We are trying to follow the example of someone who forgives and loves and accepts and doesn't get walked over, but chooses a path that is nonviolent and accepting and affirming. Slowly, we get to learn compassion. And what's compassion? It's that deep, inward feeling of care toward another person. It's the foundation for all the other things: kindness, humility, generosity, patience. I'm not preaching on patience. I don't want opportunities to practice that. The next time you are about to get into a conflict with someone, or when someone's like pushing your buttons, I need you to remember this crucial question. Stop and ask this question. What is the most generous interpretation of this person's behavior? What is the most generous interpretation of this person's behavior? If you're face to face with them, look them in the eye. What's your most generous interpretation? Do you think they're really trying to hurt you? Probably not. And even if they are trying to hurt you, what is your most generous interpretation of that? Are they afraid of something? Are they speaking from a place of unresolved pain and trauma, like we often do? Are they exhausted or hungry or tired or overstimulated? Are they getting loud because it feels like no one is hearing them? If we stop and breathe and ask ourselves, what is the most generous interpretation of this behavior? It will change your conflicts forever. Because the pause and that question and the breath, it gives you the space to respond not out of anger, but out of compassion. Interpreting behavior and words generously allows us to respond kindly and humbly and patiently. You might entirely avoid a blow-up. You may disarm an entire disagreement if you just see their underlying need or your own and acknowledge it. And when we respond as if we're wearing our old clothes of malice and rage and abusive language, maybe we need to turn that question on ourselves. What is the most generous interpretation of my behavior? We're not used to giving ourselves compassion. It's really easy for us to be empathetic, maybe not really easy, but it's much easier for us to be empathetic towards other people. And then when we get to ourselves, we're like, why would you do that? Can't believe you did that again. I can't believe that's the way you act. That's not. What is the most generous interpretation of your behavior? Are you speaking from a place of unresolved pain and trauma? Are you exhausted and overstimulated? Are you loud because no one's hearing you? And then we get to work up the nerve to apologize. Even if you want to brush it off and bury it and ignore it, be like, well, we're fine now, so it's fine. Repairing is what keeps us together. We have to model what repairing looks like. Even if it makes us feel ashamed and stupid and nervous, we have to model what this looks like. I'm not good at this either. Because there wasn't really in the way I grew up, like if you did something, you just, once it was over and you didn't talk about it anymore. You didn't go back and say sorry. So for me, saying sorry is like way harder than getting into a conflict, and getting into a conflict is really hard for me. We have to raise a new generation of kids, and we have to raise ourselves as adults. We have to parent ourselves who can actually repair with each other and navigate conflict. And it will feel tricky because all new things are. It will feel hard because it is hard, not because you're doing something wrong. But every time we do it, inch by inch, apology by apology, we will build the muscle memory, and it'll feel less hard. And we will build an actual community of people who can truly spread peace in the world because we can sustain it inside of ourselves. We have 2 more songs. So I just invite you to stand and just kind of reflect on where in your life you could give yourself and the people around you a little more grace. And then we'll come back and do a benediction.
I will turn to you when night is falling, when my sin is calling, when I can't see straight and the smoke's in my eyes. I will wait for you when the future's blurry, amidst the rush and hurry, when the pain is real and the questions burn, 'cause there's no limit to your love, no bottom to your ocean, no top to your mountain, no end to your sky. There's no limit to your love, no bottom to your ocean, no top to your mountain, no end to your sky. There's no limit to your love. I will turn and walk in a new direction, remove this infection, yeah, this need to own and get what's mine. I will ask for wisdom when I'm lost, nail my motives to the cross, and find my peace in the promises you've made. Oh, I will call on your name, Jesus. There's no limit to your love, no bottom to your ocean, no top to your mountain, no end to your sky. There's no limit to your love, no bottom to your ocean, no top to your mountain, no end to your sky. There's no limit to your love. I will bend the knee before your throne, worship you and you alone. I will cast away these worthless chains, 'cause there's no limit So this is the last song. And it's called This Is the Sound. I've come to breathe life on dry bones.
so good. I love our band. Y'all do too, clearly. If you're new here or if you'd like a free sticker, check out the Stuff Center on your way back. Your way out? Your way back to your car? I could have made that work, I feel. So we're going to Love Food Central. We have some stuff to tear down. They do have outside seating, and you can even order like from your phone from the table and not even go inside. They'll like bring it to you. They have a milkshake. It is amazing. And I'm not just saying this as a person who cannot handle dairy. It's very good. I also have some updates for you, like financial updates. So if you're new around here, we have an honesty policy. We will tell you what is going on all the time. We put our finances in our newsletter, our email newsletter that goes out. I do not have the official numbers for the last 2 months of 2021 yet. When I have all of the numbers for 2021, I will give them to you, of what we brought in and what we sent out, etc. Any money that comes in, we take 10% off the top immediately, put it in a separate account. We save it up for a while, and then we put it back to local nonprofits, etc. Because we're not going to ask y'all to be generous if we're not. So in June last year, we took a leap of faith. It really felt like a step off a cliff for me personally. But we hired our only full-time employee, which is me. As I mentioned, I was drowning. Trying to care for a baby full-time and work full-time and do this also. And that we had enough money because of COVID, because we were closed for a while and we only did online. We had enough money to pay for 6 months of a person's salary. And we were like, well, if we don't bring in another dime, we have 6 months. So I don't have the final numbers yet, but I think based on what is in our bank account, we've used about half of it. So about 3 months out of 6, actually I guess it's 7 now, 4 months, we hit budget like half of those months. So that's the update. So we're gonna give it another couple months, see how it goes. It's a really interesting thing. I know money talk makes people uncomfortable. Actually, it makes me uncomfortable too, just so you know, and I'm the pastor. Because I think a lot of us have grown up in situations or been in faith communities where donations are very fear or punishment based. And it's like, you have to donate, first of all, for God to love you. If you are not donating, then God somehow, you're robbing God. I heard that all the time growing up. And then there's all these hierarchies. We don't do that. It's a really interesting way to be, to have people donate because they want to, not because there's pressure. So what we say is, if you have the resources and you believe in what we're doing, we could use your support. If you don't have the resources, your presence is more than enough for us. We will do this as long as we have the ability to, until there is $0 in our bank account, which hopefully will never happen. But until we can't physically be here, we will be here, providing a safe space for people. And if you have the ability to support us in that, it means the world to us. This is an awkward ending. I got going and then I ran out of steam. So we have, I think in our separate account to donate back into the community, we have about $800 right now. So probably at the end of January, we will be making another donation. In December and in November, we made our last donations, which were $1,000 to Reach St. Pete, as well as a whole carload of toys that y'all donated. And they are an organization that works with homeless and at-risk people right here in St. Pete. We've worked with them many times in the past. They're fabulous. And then we were able to donate $500 to get a wheelchair lift repaired on a float for the crew of Sir Francis Drake, which is the only ADA compliant float in existence. And they do all kinds of things with disabled adults and special needs kids. And I have a lot of feelings about that because I have a baby now. If you were a special needs kid and you couldn't get on the float and you wanted to be on the float and I can't. So we were very happy to be able to donate to that as well. And when we have another amount to donate, we will tell you what that is immediately. But if you ever have any questions about our finances, please come find me. We are open book. I will tell you anything you want to know. Got it? Cool. And now, the moment you've all been waiting for. I'm kidding. Let's pray, and then we will go have a most excellent Sunday. When we gather as siblings in the Spirit of God, when we heal our childhood wounds, when we ask for forgiveness and seek repair, when we demand a world where we prioritize each other's safety, this is what it means to practice hope. This is to worship God. Hope is a muscle we build in community, not a wish. May the God of new beginnings bless the shaky steps we take on our road to freedom. May the God of endings honor everything that has been lost in our lives. And may the God of all that is still becoming guide us as we learn how to be with each other. Amen. Thanks for being here, y'all. Air hug. Goodbye.